139 parallel session in room 1202, investigating impact of ChatGPT on creativity among literature and non-English majors in Bangladeshi private universities by Ms. Taslim Ashraf. Please.
Respected session chair and the audience, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to my presentation. I am Dr. Taslim, Associate Professor in Tesolbd University, Bangladesh, and title of my paper is Investigating Impact of ChatGPT on Creativity among Literature and Non-English Majors in Bangladeshi Private Universities. And this is my presentation outline. We are actually living in a time when artificial intelligence, once a distant idea from science fiction, has silently entered our classrooms, our research, and even our imagination. Among many AI tools, ChatGPT has perhaps made the loudest entrance, reshaping the way university students think, learn, and create. But here's the question that inspired my talk. Is ChatGPT expanding students or silently replacing them? To explore this, I conducted this comparative study. You can also call it a comparative study, as there were two learner groups, English majors and non-English majors. Around 300 students from different private universities of Bangladesh were chosen randomly for my survey. And I wanted to identify their usage patterns of ChatGPT, benefits and challenges they face while using this AI learning tool, and the impact it creates upon the creativity. Since it was a mixed method research, there was a structured questionnaire survey, focus group discussion, face-to-face interview, and content analysis, which I'll be analyzing. The analysis revealed something very fascinating. It was observed that English majors, mostly in the EFL classrooms, they use ChatGPT or treat ChatGPT as their creative partner. They use it for brainstorming their ideas, refining their ideas, and look for new perspectives. Whereas mostly non-English majors use ChatGPT for instant answers or shortcut answers. However, both these groups have faced similar challenges. In terms of facing similar challenges, I'd like to share one of my experiences which I had a few semesters back. I was teaching general history and Western history highlights in one of my literature batches. And it was sort of a home assignment. In that course, there is a huge chapter which talks about how Protestantism spread in the European Christian countries. So I told my students to write a 1,000-word essay on the most prominent figure who actually contributed in bringing Protestantism to Europe. So my students were supposed to write about this Martin Luther, the German monk. However, some of the students, when I was checking the assignments, I found that they have given information about this Martin Luther, who was a civil rights activist. He was also a Baptist, which means this is what happens when you do not have the knowledge to give the right prompt or the right information, to get information from ChatGPT. Which means ChatGPT can write essays that are spotless, perfectly structured, and entirely wrong, unless and until you give the right prompt. So my problem statement deals with ChatGPT is reshaping how university students think and create, but its influence on creativity differs across learner groups, which means you cannot confirmly 100% say that ChatGPT destroys students' creativity, because it depends on who the learner is, why he's using it, and how he's engaged with it. Even though we all know what ChatGPT refers to, can you please raise your hands and tell me whether you have used ChatGPT at least once in your life? How many? All of us have an idea about ChatGPT. So what is the ChatGPT refers to? Generative pre-trained transformer. In simple words, we can say that ChatGPT refers to any AI learning tool which can respond to us like humans. And the more we're interacting with it, the more human it is becoming. The first version of ChatGPT came into this world in 2018. Until 2020, mass population started using it. And at present, we are using ChatGPT version 5. Now, there's a long list of researchers, programmers, scientists, computer scientists associated with ChatGPT. The very famous names are common names are Sam Altman, Elon Musk, Julius Astor, Greg Brockman, and many. Now, the most fascinating thing about this is that these scientists are now telling that these ChatGPT version 1 to version 5 were actually the infant version of a more advanced version that is coming in 2026 and 2027. There was a very recent research conducted over a group of high school learners in use ChatGPT inside the classrooms. When it was prohibited, it was observed that the teachers are using ChatGPT. They used it for making question papers, for making course outlines, for making meeting proceedings. Because we cannot deny the fact that ChatGPT makes our work easier and faster. That means if we do not teach our students how to involved how do literature students and non-English majors differ in the use of ChatGPT, what effects does ChatGPT usage have on their creativity, and are there any significant differences in creativity scores between heavy and light ChatGPT users. There have been already many research conducted about ChatGPT and AI learning, and I have found that there are mixed responses from scholars and educators. Some scholars and educators are thinking that it can be integrated along with the traditional teaching method, whereas some of them are thinking that it can be, it can act as a threat because it can cause academic dishonesty. Raman, in one of our private universities, researchers found that there are increased adoption of ChatGPT among Bangladeshi public and private universities. Marjanibad and Mohammadi from one of the Iranian universities found that the students who use ChatGPT's feedback along with teachers' feedback improve their academic writing in the end. And Kraft, Robotiger, and Guilford gave their different perspectives of creativity. As my research also deals with creativity, let's see what creativity refers to. It means making something useful and making ideas that are new and useful. This is actually Dr. Teresa Emilian's componential model of creativity, where she mentioned that the environment where people work in is the most important thing. So it has to be very positive. That person also needs to have some expertise in his or her own area of expertise, and he has to think beyond the conventions to become more creative. Based on this componential model, I designed my theoretical and conceptual framework, where I work with three different theories: cognitive load theory, constructivist learning theory, and self-determination theory. Now, cognitive load theory says that human brain has unlimited boundaries. It can store unlimited amount of data. However, our working memory is very tiny compared to the storage memory. So it gets overloaded very quickly. So what happens is that when the students are very much exhausted for difficult tasks, academic complex reading and writing, their brain gets overloaded. Now, if ChatGPT or AI learning tool comes as a aid, because we know that it can simplify information, it can simplify any very difficult complex things in such a manner that a 10-year-old can also be able to understand. So if that creates an extra space in the student's brain, does that lead to creativity? And if it leads to creativity, who does it benefit? Is it the English majors or the non-English majors? Similarly, in constructivist learning theory and self-determination theory, it says that real learning happens when a person actively builds knowledge themselves. And that happens when the person has strongest motivation. But if they rely too much on AI, that intrinsic motivation could drop and their creativity could be affected. So in my research, there were both independent and dependent variables, where I wanted to test this idea generation problem solving across two learning groups. I analyzed my data using SPSS, where I actually tried to find out the significant differences in all these statements. Not all these statements have significant differences across learning groups. Wherever I found significant differences, I went for the percentage differences. The yellow lines are for non-English majors and blue lines are for English majors. As you can see, I am only reading one of these statements. As you see, I use ChatGPT even for tasks I can complete on my own, which shows over-dependency or over-reliance from the non-English majors. And 73% of non-English majors agree to this idea. These all, since for impact on ChatGPT, these are some of the highlights of my major findings. As it says that it also shows over-dependency or over-reliance by non-English majors than literature majors over the idea. I also received some responses from face-to-face interview. As you can see, some of the responses I've highlighted. These are the responses from English majors, as they said that they double-check it because they already felt the problem that if you do not verify your data, you can put you in problem. It's supposed to be organization but not be written. So they try to rewrite and reinterpret everything. However, from the non-English majors, you see the responses, very interesting responses. I let it do most of the work, I just based on something, but I know it's not right. Which means non-English majors know that it is a great example of academic dishonesty, but still they're doing it. This one is more interesting. Lastly, they said that inside the classroom I get the work done by ChatGPT, but during exams I can't, therefore I receive poor marks in compensation. You do not need a psychological reactive theory to understand that. If you tell a teenager to do something, they will want to read it. That means do not use ChatGPT. It's not going to help. So what can be the recommendations? So I would prefer that teachers should train students to do the task independently. We should raise awareness among the students that use ChatGPT, but use it more effectively so that your creativity is not here are some of the suggestions that we use. We can use like writing story. We can tell our students in our classrooms using ChatGPT to write 3 different stories with 3 different endings. Then the students will read the story and decide which one was the best. Predict the ending reading count. You can tell ChatGPT to give half of the story, the rest of the story you will predict. Then use ChatGPT as a vocabulary quiz generator, debate partner simulation, conversation starter practice, comprehension practice by level adjustment. Starting from grade 1 to tertiary level, it can give you comprehension with the answers. So if we can constantly tell the students to practice comprehension, adjusting their level. So this is all. I think I ended it in 12 minutes. That was a very short time for a very big presentation.
If the audience has any questions. I do have one observation about the presentation. So what I got that English majors use AI more effectively. Is that correct?
Yes.
So any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.